Hey, Gabriel Blake,
Hey, Gaybros Jose.
where are we today?
Despite San Francisco being in the orange tier, we decided to record from our respective apartments today for many reasons, one of which is to avoid having a lot of background noise.
That's one of them. I mean, I had to say sorry to the audience that they have already just put up with the last two episodes. They weren't as bad, I think, that's as the first ones that we ever recorded, but they still are a different. Yeah, they're the part two.
But they had a crucial conversation with me before this podcast saying I need to speak louder. So I commit to all 7 of you listeners, I will speak louder.
Yeah, you owe them that. You owe them
I
that.
do owe them that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what did we watch today?
We watched the 1992 masterpiece, Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. And I'll say that you recommended this film. I didn't know that it was directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and I do pride myself on knowing or having seen like good vampire films. I'm not like a huge fan, but I feel like when there's something interesting, I do like the genre of vampire films. And I had never seen this film. You were surprised, you wanted me to watch it, and that's how we got here.
Yeah, and you already like just basically said why I picked it, but yeah, I was like surprised that you had never watched it. I knew that the reception of this movie was not too good back then when it was released, but at the same time, when I watched it the first time, that probably I was 20 years old or something. I didn't even watch it when it was released. I watched it like some years later. I remember like the things that it isn't that bad. I mean, it's not a masterpiece, but I think that they are like there are some elements that I like. Now we will go over those elements later.
So in 1992, I was 8, which explains why I missed this film, essentially. I don't know what else to say. I mean, I understand why I didn't watch it, and now, after watching it, I'll understand why I should have avoided it.
Watch it. So, what is this movie about?
This movie is essentially a very faithful adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. Like, it's not that surprising. It is surprising in how faithful it was. I think, how many interpretations of Dracula do you think were produced before this? I mean, countless, I would say. I mean, a lot of people had created or like turned the book into a film, but they've all taken creative liberties. Mm-hmm. So Francis Ford Coppola took the story that Bram Stoker wrote, and he turned it into a film. So Keanu Reeves plays a solicitor from London, mm-hmm. and he's very ambitious. He wants to become more wealthy. He wants to kind of climb the social ladder, but not in like a. Yeah. He's not like a social climber. He just wants to be worthy of his wife. His fiance is Winona Ryder. Mm-hmm. They have a very nice love affair. And then because he's employed by his law firm sends him to Transylvania, where they said, hey, there's this very eccentric Count Dracula. He wants to move to London. You need to go to Transylvania to save him, or to help him move to London. Yep. So he does go. Count Dracula, the backstory that this film gives of him is that he is the bravest soldier in the Transylvania army, and he goes to fight the Turks when the Turks are trying to take over Constantinople. He wins his battle, but the Turks played a dirty trick, and they told Winona Ryder that he had died in battle. So,
well, Winona Ryder he tells his wife. The Turks tell his wife that he happens to be.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. Her modern name is Mina, but I can't remember her name back in the day. So he wins the battle, but the Turks tell her that he's died. So she commits suicide, and when he returns to his castle, he's completely devastated. And then this is just guessing, but he spent eternity. Well, this is important to say. he got super upset that he was trying to protect the church, and then his fiance died, and so he goes batshit insane inside a church, and he stabs like a holy cross, and the cross starts to bleed, and everything in the church starts to bleed, and essentially he became a vampire because he was so upset. But I will say that part of the charm of this film is that they didn't bother to like explain how he became a vampire. It's not important.
Well, I mean, I had a feeling that probably on the original book that was not that explained either, you know, from the perspective that it's part of to the imagination. It's a folklore tale. It's not about like a sci-fi kind of thing. So, yep, he just basically, how do you say, like dirty, like soil the name of Christ in the church. And he's like, and that's a curse. It throws a curse. That's it. Now he's a vampire.
Extremely blasphemous. He did everything that you would say is offensive inside a Catholic church, and it was Catholic, right?
Yeah, probably.
You would guess it was Catholic.
Yeah.
So then the film cuts away, and you assume that he became this vampire, and it fast forwards many years later. That's when Keanu Reeves goes to Transylvania. He has a fiancée in London that looks exactly like Count Dracula's bride that killed herself, and he has Keanu's character in Transylvania and wants Keanu to help him move to London. Then it becomes a little bit like murky about what actually happened. I mean, Count Dracula literally goes to London, but then it's like he starts to hit on Winona Ryder and they develop a relationship, but Keanu is back at the Transylvania castle and he's being eaten, or his blood is being drank by 3 undead brides, one of which is Monica fucking Bellucci, which is the most bizarre. Like, I was like, what? Is that really her? Because she doesn't have a real role. Like, I just happened to recognize her.
Was he popular at that point? We're talking 92.
I don't know. So I was 8 in 1992.
She was 28, I think. Yeah, she should be old enough for actually this. She already had a career, a bit of a career.
And I will say that I was so happy to be reminded of David Lynch's dream in Twin Peaks: The Return, when he had a dream about Monica Bellucci and she just showed up for a scene. And I was like, oh, there's Monica Bellucci again.
Yeah, actually, no, this was her 4th movie, and I think that the previous ones, they were Italian, so maybe this was like her breakthrough,
like Americans.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Winona Ryder's character is in London. She falls in love with the prince. Keanu is stuck in Transylvania, and Count Dracula morphs into many different creatures, including a vampire and a werewolf, which super confused me for the first, hour.
He also turns into fog. Into this green fog.
He turns into fog. At some point, he's a lizard. Sometimes he's a wolf. It's very nebulous. And to be honest, I had a hard time following the plot because I feel like Francis Ford Coppola wasn't interested in setting up like rules or boundaries, which I ended up thinking was a very nice thing. Like, I enjoyed going on that journey with him. But eventually Keanu Reeves escapes the castle. He comes back to London. He fights.
Oh, no. He doesn't go back to London. He actually asks Winona Ryder to just meet her so they can get married.
That's right. So he escapes. He makes his way to some nuns.
Yeah,
and he writes a letter. It's like, please come back. And she comes to him. And that entire time, Gary Oldman as Count Dracula is like creating some sort of master plan in London. I don't know. Like, I honestly feel like the term "jumps the shark" applies to this film.
At what point does he jump the shark?
I think so. Winona Ryder has a best friend. Her name is Lucy, right?
Yeah.
So Lucy is basically a slut. And I know that Dracula is supposed to be about the fear of like female sexuality, like I get it. But at some point, while Keanu Reeves he's imprisoned in Transylvania, and Winona Ryder is kind of like missing him, and then Count Dracula drinks Lucy's blood, but as a werewolf. And I was like, wait, is this supposed to be like a completely different character? And it's like, no, it's not. It's the same person.
Yep.
And at that point, I was like, okay, Coppola's not interested in making sense of any of this.
No.
He just wants like a visual feast. And visually, it's, I don't want to say impressive because I could never forget they were on a set, ever. Like, it's so clearly a set and actors that it frustrated me.
Yeah. So the thing is, I felt like everything. I remember like even like thinking about this the first time that I watched it a long, long time ago. At that point, I appreciated that everything was like slightly fake, and he was like just homaging, pretty hardcore homaging 30s cinema. 20s and 30s cinema. Is the kind of resources that they use of the early stages of cinema as we know it, the kind of blend of images that by today's standard feels so tacky.
And I had that thought. I thought, is he referencing the golden age of cinema? Because this is so over the top. Like, I couldn't engage with it emotionally because it was like, oh, this is a set. Oh, like, here's an insane asylum and everybody has cages on their head. Like, it was so ridiculous that...
Yeah. I mean, we had to think that this is from the same director of this Apocalypse Now, is that he could have directed in any other place, in any kind of other, like, more authentic way, but he went for this kind of very forced style. That was the vision that he had for this, is that he wanted to just say that, hey, I want you to think about like the old adaptations of Dracula. And this is going to be like just closer to what the book was. If it makes more sense, probably not, because that's the reason why adaptations have changed, and expanded that lore of the character. But he decided to just keep it as simple and as nonsense as possible.
And I will say that, so you recommended this film, you had seen it before, and then you watched it before me this week, and you texted me, oh my God, I sorry, basically, regardless of how you felt about it. So I started watching the film thinking I wasn't going to like it. In the first half, I went back and forth, but I was like, this is interesting. Gary Oldman is Count Dracula? This is interesting. I want to hear more about the story.
Yeah. I would say that is like the makeup that they use on Gary Oldman, and Gary Oldman as the main villain. I think that works well. And that's the end of the list of things that I think that they work well.
I will agree that Gary Oldman's performance was spectacular. It was interesting to watch him outact Anthony Hopkins, who basically seemed completely impotent. And that's not to say I don't like him as an actor. I think he's talented, but like watching him compared to Gary Oldman, I was like, yeah, this is a talented actor.
To be completely frank, and this is something that you told me, and I was just telling to a friend, is that look, I don't get who did the casting for this, because you actually have like a Lebanon actor, American actress just playing British people, and then you have like two British actors, Anthony Hopkins and Gary Oldman, and you make them play a German accent, a terrible German accent that you only realize that he's German because he says "ja" from time to time.
Well, Anthony Hopkins is an American. He doesn't have an accent. So all of it feels so forced. You're looking at it, aren't you?
I'm looking at that, but no, he's from UK, man. He's from Wales. Yeah. He's a Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And that's what I found like hilarious. Like Gary Oldman, I think that he's also British.
Yeah, no, he's definitely British. I kept having flashbacks of Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy in this film.
Yeah. So basically, they pick two British accents, and they told them it's like just make another accent. Don't use your accent. Don't pretend that you are British, because we know that you are British. And then you actually took like two Americans, and then you made them play a British role. That is like, it's from the first time that Keanu Reeves opened his mouth and he forces like this British accent, it's like, oh my gosh, this is painful.
And I texted you when I started to watch this film, and I was like, this is insufferable. Like, I cannot watch Keanu Reeves do this shitty accent for 2 hours. Overall, it ended up being tolerable, but I honest to God don't understand why Francis Ford Coppola cast him. I mean, I get it. The early 90s, he was, fire. People loved him. When did Speed come out?
Oh, that's a good one.
I think it was like 1990. Like, this was at the peak of the Keanu era.
Well, I mean, he's still like super popular.
No, he is, but as like a heartthrob.
Oh no, actually, this is like the beginning of his booming popularity. I mean, he just did like My Own Private Idaho, and then he did Dracula. Yeah, and then he did Much Ado About Nothing, Speed in '94, Johnny Mnemonic, A Walk in the Clouds.
So, like I said, I ended up going back and forth between whether or not I liked the film. I think visually there's a lot that Coppola did, and sometimes I liked it, but most often I didn't. And I was like, just like, make this simpler. Like, make the vampire sexy or deadly, but I feel like he floated around a lot of ideas. Exactly. He had no idea what he wanted Dracula to be. And I was willing to go on that ride with Coppola, but I don't feel like he took me on the ride I enjoyed.
That's completely fair, man. That's completely fair. It's like, for me, is the first part, I was like a bit on the fence, as you said, but I think that when Gary Oldman gets to London, is that things start like getting a bit more like, and then like towards the end, it felt like this is as damn as it gets. Is it all the last part?
It's awful. I did read the New York Times review, of course, and it said, this film is pretty good as long as you don't look for any meaning. Like, if this is just entertainment, it's fine. And I felt that way. They also said that the sets were too intense. Actually, they praised the sets, and for me, the sets were so distracting. I never forgot once they were actually on a movie set because it's so fake.
Yeah, but also at the same time, think that this is the 90s, this early 90s.
Yeah.
It's like, so sets used to be like pretty cardboard style that is like, it's super obvious what it is. And one of the things, did you watch or did you see or whatever the Phantom of the Opera?
No, I did not.
So the story reminded me like a bit, like the damnness from time to time. That is like, okay, the Phantom of the Opera, the more that I watch it, or I watch the show or whatever, is the least I like it. But as it's a musical, is like has a saving grace, but it's like whether between this and Cats, it's pretty obvious that you are not like the most talented, when you actually pick up your projects. But in any case, this one reminded me of the formula, the formula about like this kind of gothic horror love.
I see what you're saying, and I agree with you, but I also think there were these very clever visual tricks that the director did that made the film creepy and like kind of unexplainable. Like, Keanu Reeves is on his way to Transylvania. He's dropped off in the middle of nowhere, and he's picked up by a metaphysical coach driver. And there's this cool shot where the coach driver like reaches out super far, like completely unrealistic, grabs him by the shoulder and puts him in the coach. And I thought, that's creepy. But if the director can pull it off, and Francis Ford Coppola, this isn't his thing. Like, he doesn't do creepy, and so it felt like flat.
Yeah, I think it's surprising. I wish that I knew why he decided to do this. What was the motivation? Why is like, hey, the last thing that I'd done, because I think that it was like just after that, it was The Godfather Part 3. I think.
No, this came out in 92. He had to have other films.
No, it was in 90. The Godfather Part 3 was 1990, and Dracula was 1992.
Wow.
So it was like just after that. And it's true that The Godfather Part 3 is weaker than the other two, because Sofia Ford Coppola is in it, but and other reasons. She didn't mangle the whole movie completely by herself. It's like, for Coppola was like a bit of probably not as inspired as with the other two, or Andy Garcia too. Oh God. But yeah, he basically decided to, okay, I have like these mafia stories that I excel at. I'm going to be like doing something completely random.
I have to say that this thought crossed my mind many times, and it's probably unpopular. but I honestly thought Francis Ford Coppola is probably the most overrated director in cinema history, because he made The Godfather 1 and 2, which were good, 100%.
They're a bit more than good, but sure.
No, they're great.
Yeah.
Godfather 3, shitty. What else did he do? I think he lucked into those scripts.
Well, I mean, didn't he do Apocalypse Now? Or was
he did do Apocalypse Now in 1979.
Yeah.
And I liked that film a lot. But if you look about his entire canon, he kind of lucked into The Godfather, and the rest is kind of shitty.
Well, Cotton Club is good. I mean, I know that you don't like musicals, but I think that Cotton Club I was surprised by it. It's about like, wow, okay, I wasn't expecting this to be decent. I won't say that it's the best movie ever or anything like that, but it was like a enjoyable trip. Similar to
I don't see that. I'm open to it, but if you look at his filmography on IMDb, like, there's nothing here. That's it. He was The Godfather, and then he started to make wine.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's one. Yep.
So
I don't know. Someone told me that his last movies, even after Dracula, they're just bizarre. Is that they're like just the perspective of he was left to his own devices, like a bit more of, okay, you just do your thing. Is that you're for Coppola, so is that you can do whatever.
I did enjoy the conversation in 1974. I think you and I may have watched that together, but I liked that film a lot. But in terms of like gravitas, there's nothing more to Francis Ford Coppola besides giving birth to Sophia, who gave us a lot of important cinema.
I was wondering. I was after, and besides that, like the invite for today was like Gaybros go with the right Coppola, and it's like after watching this, like holy shit, I know that he's going to be like doing a joke about Sofia Ford Coppola being more talented than his father.
No, but all joking aside, like honestly, do you think that Sofia Coppola is making or has made more interesting films than Francis?
No.
Because I wouldn't have said that until I watched this film, and then I dived into his filmography, and I'm like, no, there's nothing else interesting he's made.
Look, if he did The Godfather Part 1 and 2 and Apocalypse Now. It's like Sofia Ford Coppola is never going to be doing something as important as those films. She's talented. I'm not saying that she's not, but it's like when you actually look about like the time that Ford Coppola released those movies, is that this was like leaps ahead of anything else.
I respect that 100%. But if I were to look at Francis Ford Coppola's entire like canon and Sophia's, the one that I want to watch is Sophia's. And I know we disagree about, you don't like The Virgin Suicides, you don't like the Bill Murray Tokyo film.
I like Lost in Translation, and I like the
But you have a limit to how much you like it. You think it's good, but not great.
Exactly. It was like, for me, it's like, look, this was fun to watch it. I may watch it again. I may still like find it funny, but I never got it like to the point is that this has been like so transcendental. I feel like it's defining society as a whole.
But do you feel that way about Francis Ford Coppola? I would guess no. There's nothing culturally innovative in these films. Nothing.
Well, are you telling me that there was not like anything like culturally important in Apocalypse Now?
No, you're right about that. That's an important film. I really resonated with it. Yeah, you're right.
That one, yeah, I can tell you that it's okay. The Godfather is like a mob story. Is that you can say that is okay. What is the importance of the commentary or social commentary? But no, I think that Coppola, on his early years, and I think that most directors in the 70s, the good directors, they were trying to be a bit more about message, trying to be a bit more of a reflection of what is happening in reality, and trying to portray it on the screen. And Sofia Ford Coppola has never done that, because she's like just the daughter of the times, It's like when she was doing like The Virgin Suicides, she said, look, I cared a bit more about atmosphere and a bit more about like the feeling, more than actually just telling you any kind of message that you can take or any kind of thought that you can take from this.
I do hear what you're saying, but I would argue the opposite point. I think Lost in Translation is an important, relevant film. I think that, well, we know how you feel about the Virgin Suicides, but I think it's also an important film. And then, what's the film about the celebrity deadbeat dad?
Marie Antoinette.
No, that's just a bonus. Marie Antoinette. Watching this film, I really understood that I prefer Sophia Ford Coppola's. Wait, is her middle name Ford? No, Sophia Coppola.
Sophia Coppola.
I prefer her filmography. That being said, I have a lot of complaints about Dracula, but I enjoyed it much, much more than I thought it would. It was very atmospheric, despite me getting caught up in the sets and the bad accents. Ultimately, it's a relatively compelling story. Again, I think it jumped the shark in the last maybe third of the film, but I found it relatively compelling for the first 2/3.
So one of the problems that I had is I can't remember it like more disturbing. I remember like more effective, let's say. And for me, everything felt, as you said, more like cardboard, more like a set, more like everything has been like just constructed for this. It doesn't feel like organic. So when I was thinking, one of the reasons that I wanted you to see it is because I tend to mention, I'm sorry, this is going to be like getting a bit gay, but it's like if someone goes down in a ferocious way on me, I'm going to be like saying is that, oh, this is like the vampiresses, like the brides from Dracula. And it's like, and when I saw it this time, it's like, no, I was expecting like more ferocity to those scenes, and they never get to actually just being like more, I don't know, raw, more primal.
I see what you say, and I agree with you. And I think for me, the fact it was so obvious these were sets, it really detracted, because there's one point where Keanu Reeves has just arrived at the Transylvania Castle. He's been very welcoming to Keanu, and he said, hey, don't leave this room, you need to sleep here. But then these basically undead brides, they come out of his mattress and they start to consume him, but in a very sexual way.
Yeah, but he actually goes to their room. He gets called to their room. He's not in his room. Dracula tells him, you shouldn't leave the room, and he still does it.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. I don't know where I was going from here. He steps in and he's like, you cannot feed on him, I own him. And it's a very sexual moment, and it was it was homoerotic. And the women are like so upset, and they're like, what, are we to have nothing tonight? And then Anthony Hopkins brings an infant,
Gary Oldman.
a baby.
Gary Oldman.
Huh?
Gary Oldman, not Anthony Hopkins.
Oh yeah, you're right, sorry. He brings an infant, and he gives it to the three undead brides, one of which is Monica Bellucci, and they eat the baby. And that scene was, I agree with you, it wasn't that impactful, but I thought a lot about the witch.
Yeah.
And how disturbing it was that the witch kills a baby in that film. It's so fucking messed up. But it didn't have that same like impact here. Why? Why didn't it?
I don't know. I think that it's like he was just trying, and the thing is like in Apocalypse Now, or even in the Godfather, he doesn't shy from violence. I mean, it's not that he loves gore. You know, he's not like the director from Hostel or anything like that, but he doesn't shy from it. And I had the feeling that he was trying to say that I'm going to be like doing this in the way that it would have been done in the 30s with the kind of sensibility that they had there. Is that we are not going to be like showing anything disturbing. We may insinuate it, but we are never going to go like full-fledged into it.
And I did feel like I felt this like reticence of Francis Ford Coppola, like he wasn't fully committing to the genre. I mean, he did these horrific things like, hey, these vampires ate a baby. But the entire time I was thinking, this is the director of Taxi. No, wait, that's Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, that's the other.
But I just felt like there's nothing that I've seen in films by Francis Ford Coppola that make this unique. Like, there's nothing here that makes me feel like this film is anything beyond like a guilty pleasure that I would go see with my friends that aren't interested in film on a Friday night.
Yeah, it's entertainment. It's just entertainment. There is no more purpose or anything else. There is no more message. The message that you can take is love that transcends death, but it's pretty dumb. That's the reason why I think about like how do you say, the Phantom of the Opera, and just having like this kind of, I'm going to be like telling a story. It's not about like just changing your life or anything. For me, it's not so much about you thinking. It's about like I'm doing an exercise in aesthetic and in narrative.
And in his defense, he went all out on the aesthetics. For me, it didn't work because it was clearly sets, and I could never forget they were on sets, which really pissed me off. Overall, I found the story compelling. I liked it until about the last fourth of the film, where I thought it kind of just lost what it was going towards, and I was like, no, I don't care anymore. But I feel like it had a promising setup. But I feel like this is most Francis Ford Coppola films in the last 30 years. It's like it had promise and then he didn't deliver.
Yeah. Part of me is actually curious to watch like other recent Coppola movies. Not from the perspective that it's going to be great, but more from the perspective that is like, well, let's see where he went. What else he tried.
And because I was interested in the director's work, I looked up the last thing that I've seen directed by him when it came out, and it was Youth Without Youth. Did you see that? It's a film that came out in 2007.
No.
And I watched it in 2007 and I thought, this is super underwhelming. Like, this director, I don't think there's not much to him. Like, he can direct war films and mafia films, but he doesn't have anything to say beyond that.
Huh. Okay. Twists. Wow. Okay. No, the last movies that he directed have been, Oof. Yeah, I don't know. A part of me is like just, like reevaluating him about like what is his vision, what is his trademark, what makes him him.
What is he trying to say? I don't think that he has a clear voice. Like, he doesn't approach a script and say like, I want to say this. He just has the script and he's like, okay, I'll make this.
Well, I mean, I'm not completely sure. In this one, I agree with you. In this one, I think that is the vision that he was, is that and we're going to do it as if it was the 20s. He's going to have voice, of course, but everything else is going to be like just super over the top.
And to be very clear, he directed Godfather, the Part 3 in 1990.
Yeah.
Directed Dracula in 92. He waited until 1996 to direct Jack. Did you see Jack?
No.
It stars Robin Williams as a guy that like ages 4 times faster than normal, so he like gets his children friend beer and pornography and
wow.
Like, who is this guy? Who is Francis Ford Coppola? I honest to God think he lucked into the Godfather script.
But he directed it impeccably.
Dracula or Godfather?
No, The Godfather.
He did. It's Godfather 1 and 2. They are basically perfect films. I will admit that 100%. But I think that he just happened to be the lucky director who got those scripts. Because otherwise, if you take The Godfather out, he has one film, Armageddon Now, that people care about. Other than that, what has he done?
Apocalypse Now. This is not a crossover with Michael Bay.
No,
you said Armageddon Now.
No, it's Apocalypse Now. But if you take the Godfather series and that one film, who is Francis Ford Coppola? Who is he? What does he want to say to us?
Oh no. I mean, you are right about like the perspective that he did Jack. After doing Dracula, he's like, what was going on at this point? He's like, what were you thinking for just getting to this point? I honestly don't know. That you're absolutely right. It's like it's hard to identify a style per se, you know?
The only film in his filmography that I feel like could maybe be okay is The Outsiders, which is a very famous book in America. I would like to watch it. I know it's respected, but that's the only film looking past the last 50 years of filmmaking that has any sort of interest at all.
Well, you also mentioned that the conversation is good.
Yeah, that's true.
So, but reading the synopsis of the conversation, isn't it a bit like The Life of the Others?
The conversation is very interesting. It's I would say it's a lot like The Seventh Continent by Haneke.
Yeah.
It's like silent, and you watch these very like tactical scenes where a car is torn apart, but there's not a lot of dialogue. And I do find that like experimental filmmaking interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting. I'll admit that.
That's interesting. I mean, because Apocalypse Now is also like fairly experimental, but The Godfather is not that experimental.
No, it's basically like the trope of the mafia.
I mean, it's executed incredibly well, you know, but he actually just drew. Maybe there was like a bit more of a problem for him about like just being so successful with something like that it actually just marked his whole career, and he lost track of who was he supposed to be.
Yeah, maybe, and I just wish that I felt like I understood who he was and what he wanted to say, and I feel like his filmography doesn't provide that. I don't know, like, based on this film, I don't care about watching another Francis Ford Coppola film. Do you?
Partially, yes, as we just mentioned a moment ago, is that partially I would be interested in seeing like some of the early stuff, like The Conversation. I think that I would be interested to see how good he could get, you know. And then another part that I would be like interested to see how bad he could get. I wouldn't watch Jack, but it would be like just more like, okay, let's watch like something from pretty early and something from pretty late. And just
if you look at his filmography, The Godfather came out in 1972. He had 10 credits before then that you've never heard of and have made no impact on our culture. None.
Okay. No, that's fair.
Like, have you ever heard of The Bellboy and the Playgirls? Or You're a Big Boy Now? Or The Rain People?
No. No, you're right. You're right, man. He may be overrated, but in a weird way, a bit more like, okay, we are rating him as a director from 3-4 movies, basically. But he did 20. And the rest are like just forgettable.
And it makes me sad because after Godfather 1 and 2, you're like, wow, this guy is brilliant. He knows what to do.
Yeah.
Does he? No, I don't think he does. The best thing he ever did were those 2 movies and Sofia Coppola.
No, just no, man. Just no.
That being said, I'm being very critical of him, but I actually enjoyed this film a lot. At least until the last fourth of the film. It took me a while to get used to the sets and the period piece, infrastructure, but I did like this film.
Gotcha. Did you like, I don't know, well, you were like too young, so probably don't remember this, but there was an Annie Lennox song on the soundtrack that he plays during the credits. So that song was like just fairly popular because they released it as a single. And if you watch the movie, you're going to be like, oh, what is the Annie Lennox song? And it's on the credits. It's like, I hate when those things happen, It's like in Pleasantville, the version of Fiona Apple of Across the Universe that he plays in the credits. It doesn't play in the movie.
Yeah, because I don't remember any Annie Lennox song at all.
Yeah, I was just waiting. I don't know for what reason. Like when it finished, I think that it was like just with my hands, on my face, like, oh my goodness. And I let the credits like play for a bit and say, "Oh, that's right, there was an anime or something." Yeah.
I mean, overall, like, I don't regret that you asked me to watch this. Like, I think it's semi-important. I think the film is a failure, but I think as like an early 90s attempt by a director that's considered to be, successful to interpret a story that's several hundred years old, I don't regret it, but I'm not convinced that this film is important at all.
All right. Should we go over the questions?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry, 1 second. Let's see if I can get this. Dracula. So, could you watch it again?
Yeah, I think I would. I wouldn't like look forward to watching it again, but I think there's enough there to merit a second watch.
I wouldn't, honestly. I think that is like I feel like pretty ashamed of myself when I watch something that I like a long time ago and then I watch it again. It's like, oh my god. It's not that it was terrible, but I just feel like this was no bueno. Let's just put it that. It's not like exceptional or anything like that. And it's like I just feel ashamed of myself, of my old self, about like, you used to like this. You had like a good idea. You told people, hey, have you watched it? Is it maybe you could enjoy it? Is like I just felt it's like I made people like just waste 2 hours of their lives.
I hear you and I understand you, but I didn't like the film, and I also appreciate that you asked me to watch it. So
okay, I appreciate that. Could you recommend it?
Honestly, no. I can't think of somebody in my life that would like watching this, and I would feel comfortable recommending it to. No.
So something that I agree with you is like I couldn't recommend it. I cannot think anyone that I could say, you know what I want to watch? A good Dracula movie. And for me saying that is you should watch Dracula by Ford Coppola. But one thing that you were mentioning earlier about Ford Coppola, I was thinking while watching this movie about like, what do we remember Anthony Hopkins by? Because we all think that he's a great actor. He did The Silence of the Lambs. It's the first thing that it came to my mind. But then I struggled for a bit about like, what else did he do? That is Joe Black?
And like the last Indian, I think he did.
No, that was Sean Connery.
It was?
You mean like Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade? The third one?
No. He had a motorcycle movie that came out maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, the Crystal Skull? And Anthony Hopkins was on that?
No, it was called like The Last Indian, and it was about the Indian motorcycle.
Oh, gotcha. I thought that you were talking about Indiana Jones.
No. I'm looking
at
the
world's fastest Indian? The world's fastest Indian.
Yeah, the world's fastest Indian. It was about motorcycles. I mean, he was in a lot of like classics like All the King's Men.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. He's kind of like a character actor. He was in The Mask of Zorro, Amistad. Yeah, like none of this is like, wow, this is an important film.
But I was thinking about the cast. You know, it's like it's 92, and when you look in retrospect, it's like, okay, Winona Ryder, she's not an amazing actress, but she's okay. She's, of limited talent. The same thing to Keanu Reeves. Gary Oldman is an amazing actor. And then we have Anthony Hopkins. That's everyone will say is like, oh, that's the crown. Sorry, that's the jewel in the crown. But it's a guy. I struggled for a bit about like why is this this person like so popular.
I agree, and I kept thinking watching Gary Oldman, I was like, Anthony Hopkins looks like a complete novice compared to this guy. He's so good, Gary Oldman. And Anthony Hopkins didn't do anything he had 2 parts in this film, and he couldn't deliver, in my opinion, on either of them.
Yeah, to be completely also just, is like I think that the role of Dracula was more interesting than Van Helsing.
Yeah, that's accurate. And I will say that Anthony Hopkins was fantastic in The Elephant Man by David Lynch.
That's true. Do you think that you will remember this movie?
Honestly, no. I think I'll remember that it was like entertaining and pleasant to watch, but the details, no, absolutely not.
For me, the answer is yes. It's like I remember like many of the scenes, but actually my imagination had elevated it, you know, as I told you, like making it like more impactful, making like more raw, more visceral, and everything felt like so toned down. And then now I think that my brain is never going to let me forget this. I said that it's like, no, you have to remember this. You have to actually prevent yourself from recommending this to anyone. Is there anything artistic about it?
I would argue that yes. I didn't like what was artistic about it, but how busy the sets were and the characters and the extras. I mean, I was overloaded visually, which I didn't particularly like, but I will definitely remember, like, okay, Francis Ford Coppola really wanted me to understand that, you know, this is a Transylvanian castle and there's dead people. I didn't like it, but I will remember how over the top this was.
Yeah, I personally, I think that there is something artistic about it. You know, I think that the idea of, as I was saying, like the homage to the 30s, I think that works well. But also, it reminds me of, you know what, Hugo.
Of what?
Hugo.
What is that?
Hugo.
Oh, like Hugo, the Scorsese film. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, because it also tried to do like something similar about like being a homage to the early cinema of the 10s.
And I will say that it immediately became apparent that, okay, he is making in 1992 basically this like larger than life epic film that would have been filmed in like the 40s, 50s.
Yeah.
So when I understood that, I was like, okay, let's approach this from a different way. I don't think he was successful, but I do see what he was trying to do. And it was successful in a way about trying to like honor the films that came before it. I will say that it's successful, but it's not my favorite.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. So is this a timeless piece?
I would say no. It felt incredibly dated to me. And I can only imagine that 20, 30 years in the future, to new audiences, it would feel incredibly dated. The themes and the storyline, yes, they are timeless. Again, it's about like unleashed female sexuality and how that threatens like old white men. But the film itself feels like it's from another time, not in a good way.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, I recognize that there is something artistic about it. It requires like a mindset for watching and appreciating it and being able to put up with this. So I think that probably like the overall, the overall leveraging on the aesthetic and the exercise, the visual exercise, I think that it actually just makes it feel like really dated. I think that it's like at that point, the special effects, they were not that good. And it's okay, I see what you're doing. I see why you're doing that. But if you're already going to tell us that you don't care so much about the script for sustaining this movie, it's like everything else should be like top notch. And it's like, it's not.
And I had that thought. There were several like cool special effects. They would have been cool if they had been done differently, but they didn't do them right. So it's like when I told you the driver of the chariot, he reached out and he grabbed Keanu Reeves and pulled him in. That could have been brilliant with a better director, but it didn't work. It didn't work at all.
I mean, for me, that part was okay, but then you actually see the chariots like just crossing this blue fire, and it's like super tacky. It's like the kind of special effect that I would expect in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah, no, the quality of the special effects were awful.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like the makeup for Gary Oldman is perfect. I mean, it's like really good about like just seeing him like turn into a bat-like creature, and it's like you can still see that it's Gary Oldman.
Yeah, no, yeah, there were lots of good effects and lots of bad effects.
Could you turn this into a TV show?
Absolutely not. Would you?
Never. Just
No,
never.
I don't want to see any more of the story. None.
And Dom, thank you. Thank you for Coppola. Do you think this movie could have been better?
Yes, 100%. If they had leaned less on the special effects, dedicated more attention to the story, to the characters, yeah, I mean, a lot could be better here. A lot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that this is a bit more of a, how do you say? In other hands, it would have been better, but I'm not completely sure on whose hands.
Yep.
It's like at that point, it's like who could have done something here at that time that you say is like, that was perfect. That was exactly who we needed for doing this.
That's what disappointed me so much about this film is like I knew there would be things I didn't like, but I fully expected from Francis Ford Coppola that there would be more that I liked and a few things I didn't like, and there were way more things I didn't like than the things I actually liked.
Yeah, and I think that you nailed it there. There is we expect, if we think about the Godfather and Apocalypse Now, we expect like complexity on his movies, and there wasn't on this one. It's flat, dull.
All of the characters were completely, like, extremely basic. There was no sort of like, there was nothing that made them interesting or unique or like somebody you would pay attention to.
No, honestly, no. So, should we score this?
Let's score it. It was your pick, so I score first. I'm going to say a 6. I genuinely enjoyed watching the film. I found the things I didn't like. There were a lot of things I didn't like, but overall, I didn't mind watching the film.
Gotcha. For me, I debated. I don't know if you saw like the spreadsheets, but I was like just going back and forth. For me, it's going to be a 5. I think that is a just middle of the middle.
Really
Like, look, I mean, I can watch it. You know, if I go to someone's place and they are like watching this, I may watch it, but probably I'm going to be asking them, isn't there like, I don't know, 10,000 better movies than this that we could be watching?
All right, that's fair.
Yeah. So, I mean, in any case, it's like, it's not something that I want to just rip my eyes off my face, but it's something that doesn't tell me anything. Probably not going to, the only way that I'm going to be like remembering it is because I used to love it, and I felt that Jose from the past failed me more than anything else.
He didn't see what it actually was.
Exactly. I thought that he had better taste. He didn't, clearly. So.
I have that experience many times. I'm like, what? I love this as a 21-year-old. I loved it.
But nope, you're no longer a 21-year-old. So what are we watching next time?
We are going to watch the Brazilian film Bacurau.
Yeah. All right. So anything else that we have to say about Dracula?
That's it.
All right. Well, to those people listening to us, thank you so much for listening.
And wash your hands.
Bye.